said the year before that, 2 years before that, 2 years back before that.
That's right.
No, because if I'm wrong, I don't want to give it to you.
That's right. You don't want to put that on there.
Oh, 17.
That number was too
Football, basketball. Well, we won the women's league when I did last year. Men and women's league this year. Yeah. We won the football championship last year. We win the last 6 years we've been to the championship game. And got indoor and outdoor for the last 5 years. Volleyball.
Yeah. I'm trying to look it up. Evan, I'm sure you got the indoor track right.
Did they teach y'all how to read?
Now you going low. Now you going low.
Mama said if I couldn't go to college.
Now you going low. You going real low. Talk about my school.
I said if I couldn't go to college, go to Virginia State.
That's what you should have went. I would have come. I would tell y'all shoot. And we was the first black college in Virginia. So let's get that. Yeah, that sounds good.
Lane Green.
Yeah, Lane Green. What was y'all?
With the oldest station.
The oldest what?
I'm forgetting all your last names. One more mistake.
Mama said if I couldn't go to college, go to Virginia State.
That's what you should have went.
No, see, there you, that's where you should have gone.
Leave me alone.
See, if we was conjugating verbs for Virginia State. This is how I conjugate. I be shooting,
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today at the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Police Department headquarters here at the LEC off of Tryon. My name is Sandy Vastola. I'm the Director of Public Affairs here for CMPD. We appreciate you all being with us today. What we're going to talk about today is our mid-year public safety briefing. You're going to hear a lot of numbers and statistics. Please understand that every number comes with a story, so it's a lot of information to digest. This isn't something that we're required to do. This is something that we do because we do believe, and the Chief of Police believes, in transparency and accountability with the public. We have a rundown today. You have it in front of you. I didn't want to go through spelling everyone's names, but we have 3 speakers joining us. We will take questions at the end, and please make sure they stay topical to the mid-year. Okay, so with that, we're going to go ahead and get started. I'm going to bring up first Deputy Chief David Robinson over Patrol Services. Thank you.
Thank you, Sandy. Good afternoon, everybody. Appreciate you being here today. So, as Sandy said, I am David Robinson, and I do supervise all of our patrol operations here at CMPD. We're made up of numerous patrol divisions across the city, plus the airport, and very proud men and women who serve this community at the highest level, 24/7, 365 without fail. Very proud of their work. You're going to hear a little bit about that today, but let's get into the numbers. We'll begin our overall crime incidents, which rose 1% from 2024 from this time last year. And again, we're going in from January 1st of 2024 until June 30th of 2024. That includes us being flat with property crime and an 8% increase in violent crime. At the mid-year of 2023, this time last year in this room, we reported an 11% increase in overall crime. So even though we're up slightly at 1%, it's a positive sign that we're slowing the increase in overall incidents, despite Charlotte and Mecklenburg County remaining one of the most rapidly growing cities in the nation. People continue to move into this vibrant community every day. As I stated, overall violent crime incidents this year are up 8%, and this is clearly a concern. One violent crime is one too many, because there's a person behind that number, and we recognize that every day. This increase includes a 36% increase in homicides, a 9% increase in aggravated assaults, and an 8% increase in assaults with a deadly weapon involving a firearm. What I can tell you is that the men and women of the CMPD, sworn and civilian, are doing tireless work around the clock, as I said, to address violence and to reduce crime in Charlotte. We're proud of them and we're proud of their work. Here's a snapshot of that work. Our 911 inbound calls for service are up by 4%, and you've heard a lot about that over the years. Overall police interactions are up by 2% from last year, an increase of more than 6,000 face-to-face interactions. 6,000 were up. We're up in overall arrests by 5%, and we've seized more than 1,700 firearms as evidence, which is up 1% from last year. Now, these numbers represent engagement from our community members who call us to alert us, and then also proactive efforts from our team members, both on the street and in our division offices and at the LEC, to address incidents and to reduce crime in our neighborhoods. Our crime reduction units and our crime gun suppression team detectives, just two to highlight, are out every day in areas where we've experienced violent crime, proactively removing guns and arresting repeat offenders off of the street. We are often asked what we are doing as a department to address the increase in violent crime, and in particular homicides. Now, I can point to the arrest statistics, which are consistently higher than the national average clearance rate, and countless examples of times our officers acted quickly to identify and arrest violent suspects before they could offend or, in some cases, reoffend. But these examples and the numbers go far beyond policing. The increase in gun violence and homicides point to a larger societal problem. It's going to take much more than the police. It's going to take investing in communities and investing in prevention and alternatives to violence, particularly among young people. Far too often, however, by the time police officers arrive on a homicide scene, it's too late to change that outcome. Let me be clear, police need to be at the table, and police are part of the solution for a safe community, but we are not the whole solution. Community-based organizations and law enforcement agencies must work together to identify and prevent violent crime before it happens. Now, we'll continue to do our part, but we understand the root causes of crime and also know that we can't arrest our way out of this issue. Now, let's get back to the overall numbers. A major reason for the flattening of overall crime this year is that there's no increase in property crime incidents so far this year from last. Now, this is an important point. Last year, our department saw historic rises in property crime, and many of you in this room will recall when we discussed the nationwide spike in auto thefts that took off in the summer of 2022 due to the targeting of Kia and Hyundai vehicles by juvenile suspects in a method made popular through social media. Last year, Chief of Police Johnny Jennings met with and directed leadership of this organization to reduce auto property crime and made it one of our organization's top priorities heading into 2024. In mid-year of 2023, we reported out a 16% increase in overall property crime, a staggering 143% increase in auto theft incidents, and a nearly 2,000% increase in Kia and Hyundai thefts. Now, in the mid-year of 2024, we're reporting that there is no increase, let me repeat, no increase in overall property crime incidents, and an 8% increase in auto theft incidents. Now, 14% is still an increase in the Hyundai Kia thefts. If you removed Hyundai and Kias, we'd be down almost 4% overall across the jurisdiction in non-Kia Hyundai thefts. Now look, while we ultimately want to be down in these categories, this was a huge step forward and a huge effort to stop the rapid increase in these type of crime incidents. It's a major credit to the work of our patrol officers, detectives, and crime analysts who are out there doing the preventive messaging that was shared over the last 2 years about this Kia Hyundai issue. Our department has given away hundreds of steering wheel locks to Charlotte residents, and this February we teamed up with Hyundai to hold a drive-through event installing software patches to prevent these thefts. Our officers are going to continue to step up enforcement efforts. In particular, with the enforcement efforts relies on our juvenile auto theft arrests. Now, it increased 7% in 2024, with juvenile suspects accounting for 74% of all auto theft arrests. Let me say that again. 74% of all auto theft arrests involved a juvenile. This leads into another top priority of Chief Jennings, which is to address juvenile crime in Charlotte. In 2023, we saw an historic spike in juvenile crime, and as you can see on the screen behind me, that exponential growth over the last 3 years. That's exponential growth over the last 3 years. This led to another call for action from Chief Jennings. In 2024, we are up again in most metrics of juvenile crime. There have been more than 1,600 juvenile arrests this year, just so far, and that's up over 12% from last year. We've recorded more than 1,100 juvenile suspects who've been listed in Part 1 offenses. These are the most serious and the most violent. That includes a 19% increase in juvenile property crime suspects and a 7% increase in juvenile violent crime suspects. For clarity, Part 1 offenses include more serious offenses, including felonies, violent crimes, and are used to calculate overall property and violent crime. Now, what's frustrating for officers and for our department is that most juvenile crime incidents are being committed by repeat juvenile offenders. And if you look at the screen behind me, out of all juvenile arrests in 2024, 61% are from repeat juvenile offenders. That figure is up 53% over last year. Our officers are putting in a tremendous amount of work to investigate cases and to arrest repeat juvenile suspects. But most likely the result of that work is that the juvenile suspect is released back to the parent or a guardian and will potentially reoffend, sometimes within days or even hours of being released. We have direct and anecdotal evidence from officers on the street who have had a juvenile suspect get arrested, released, and then commit another crime within the officer's same shift. We've also heard from mothers in this community who have begged officers and DAs and judges to keep their child in custody because they're afraid for their child's safety and know that their child will continue to put themselves and others in harm's way. This is detrimental to both our communities that are being preyed upon, as well as the morale of our officers, who with every encounter risk their safety and well-being to identify and arrest these individuals. Now let's look at this next graphic. This is what our officers are up against. The top 3 juvenile offenders for auto theft in just 6 months have stolen or attempted to steal 50 cars this year. Now this is 3 kids accounting for that staggering number of auto thefts. Even more disturbing and disheartening this year is that we've seen a 300% increase in juvenile homicide suspects. That's 12. That's 12 juveniles who've been charged with homicide in this jurisdiction. And sadly, a 75% increase in juvenile homicide victims. That's 7. That's 7 children in our community whose parents will never get to see them grow up and to see what they could become. Chief Jennings has advocated extensively about the issue of juvenile crime and for the opening of a juvenile detention facility here in Mecklenburg County. The people of Charlotte-Mecklenburg deserve a solution that focuses on shared accountability and community safety, especially when it pertains to our juveniles. A lack of space to house juveniles should not be an excuse for allowing repeat juvenile offenders to rack up dozens or even hundreds of charges by the time they're 17 years of age. This practice fails the community and most of all the juveniles that we're sworn to protect. Because of the difficulties with even obtaining a secure custody order, which is like an arrest warrant for a juvenile, our officers only can apply for them in the most truly serious cases, either for violent felonies or for repeat felony property offenses. Just this year, the Department of Juvenile Justice has denied at least 62 secure custody order requests from CMPD officers. 62. It was a promising sign that the North Carolina House overrode a veto and passed HB 834, which will go into effect December 1st. This new law will make sure that juveniles who commit the most serious offenses based in violence will have their cases start in adult court with an option to be transferred to juvenile court. Currently, all juvenile suspect cases begin in juvenile court. This, however, does not change the fact that we need a juvenile detention facility here in Mecklenburg County. Now, I want to make this clear. We're not advocating to go out here and just lock up kids. That's the last resort. But from an accountability and a safety standpoint for the members of this community, our hands are tied. We want to work with juveniles. We want to get them on the right path. However, we also need accountability for these crimes that are committed against innocent people. At the beginning of the year, we launched our JADE team, which stands for Juvenile Accountability and Diversion Empowerment. For more on that, I'll bring up Major Brett Balamucky over the Patrol Southeast Service Area. Major Balamucky.
Thank you, Chief. Hello, everyone. I'm Major Brett Balamucky from the Southeast Service Patrol Area. As the Chief stated, JADE was launched at the beginning of the year and has been a very effective unit on helping to address juvenile crime. Our JADE officers specifically conduct juvenile investigations and operations, including making arrests, monitoring the most at-risk juveniles inside of our city. As you recently heard about JADE, as we were leading up to the July 4th holiday, the JADE officers identified subjects and juveniles that were involved in prior arrests or disturbances at prior events. The 32 identified juveniles from prior arrests and event disturbances were given a home visit where JADE officers met with the family, talked about expectations, went over the youth protection ordinance again, continuing to try to deter and educate the families so that we didn't have repeat offenders uptown while people tried to come uptown and enjoy the holiday. Very proud to say that of the 32 home visit families, only one juvenile reoffended. So 32 visits, one reoffended. During July 4th, we had 12 suspects arrested, 2 adults, 10 juveniles. The big part is 31 did not reoffend, and we're very proud of that and very proud of the work that they did with the families. And we thank the families for making sure that they had the pressure on the juvenile not to come back uptown and create an environment or put themselves in danger. The purpose of the home visit is to really build those relationships with the family. You know, when they do the home visits, they give them a list of resources, connections through the county, through the city, and it's really just trying to align priorities with the family, with our department, and with the entire volunteers and community services that wrap around services to try to help deter that, delinquent and criminal behavior. This year, JADE's made 52 juvenile arrests. We always think, oh, they've made 52 arrests, but I think some of the things that the officers on the unit are so proud of, and the most proud of, is they did 104 home visits. And when we talk about 104 home visits, that's 104 times that they sat with the families in their living rooms and discussed options and alternatives to try to, empower them to divert from a criminal activity. They seized 36 firearms and over 15 pounds of narcotics. JADE officers applied for 16 secure custody orders for the most serious felonies. They were granted 11 from the Department of Juvenile Justice. We have countless case examples of the great work that CMPD and the JADE team are doing, and I'm going to highlight a few of them for you right now. On this video that you're going to see play here, this is from April 11th, where 2 juvenile detainees escaped custody from Cabarrus County while on transport to Stonewall Jackson Youth Development Center. If you look at the video, you see they're wearing shackles. They're in a stolen vehicle, so they escaped custody, they stole a vehicle, and now they're riding around Charlotte, in the shackles, in the stolen vehicle, having a joyride, while they're filming themselves, putting this on a live stream, posting with firearms. And you see the firearms bouncing around, appears they're smoking, a substance, and it's all just to highlight the activity, highlight the behavior. They've got extensive criminal histories, but what I'm really proud of is that CMPD's crime gun suppression team immediately was able to identify where they were at in an area they were in, and then luckily, one of the Jade supervisors got behind the vehicle and started a vehicle pursuit. Something we never want to do because it's dangerous to the community. But again, these young men had escaped, were out here with firearms riding around. The pursuit ended without injury, and the crime gun suppression team was able to take them into custody. And that's that collaborative effort, and it just shows you that teamwork where the juveniles are then back in the custody of the Department of Juvenile Justice and really, preventing any further harm to the community. Second example, April 23rd this year, a 13-year-old who's out free in the community after committing an armed robbery. So he's charged with armed robbery. He's free, but he's out on an electronic monitoring, which means he has a bracelet on his ankle that tracks his movement, and he's 13 years old. Officers see him. He is in a stolen vehicle. He jumps and runs. Officers chase him down, catch him, and regardless of if he is violating his order on the electronic monitoring and not to commit more crime, he's released back to his guardian. 2 days later, the same juvenile is spotted again inside a stolen vehicle. Once again, he flees officers on foot. Again, officers catch him, but this time an officer sustains an injury that needs to be treated at the hospital. So now we've got second time in 2 days, the same juvenile commits an armed robbery or accused of an armed robbery, out on electronic monitoring, steals a car, gets given back home, steals another car, gets caught, officer's now injured, goes back home again. 20 days later, May 14th, again, charged with stealing another vehicle. And this vehicle now is linked to a shooting. Officers conduct a search warrant at the house, a search at the house. It turns up a fourth stolen vehicle by the same 13-year-old. So now you've got 4 times he's linked to felony crimes, one after another, and as of today, he's still free in the community and he's still on electronic monitoring. So these are just examples of cases, right? So third example, May 22nd, officers respond to a string of armed robberies, uptown area. So the first one happens down about the 1800 block of South Tryon Street, where multiple males armed with handguns do a robbery. Then at the 200 block of East Trade Street, an attempted carjacking with the same description. Central Division patrol officers end up catching multiple juveniles, take 2 into custody. They recover 3 handguns on these young men, 3 handguns. These 2 men then get interviewed by our detectives. Following, that they realize that the guns are all stolen from a burglary at a gun store in Matthews the night before. So May 21st, they break into a gun store targeting to get handguns as juveniles. Then these 16-year-olds come uptown and start committing armed robberies from people. The Jade team identifies another associate of them and does a home visit. And this is one of the things that really show that commitment of following through with things. Well, the Jade officer really connects to the family and really connects to the juvenile to the point where the juvenile says, hey, I need to give you something. And the juvenile goes and retrieves a handgun that was also stolen from the same gun store and turns it over to the officer. So that is really, that handgun likely could have been, used in another crime, could have continued to been on the street, passed around. And so really proud of that connection and that effort of connecting with the family and the juvenile to give them a pathway to make good decisions. Our goal is not to arrest teens because that's not going to solve the issue. We want to rehabilitate young offenders when they're at such an impressionable age. Jade wants to really reach the kids and their families where they are so that the only interactions they get are not just arrests. Ultimately, we cannot continue to keep letting them cycle crime in, crime out, crime in, crime out. You heard the chief talk about repeat offenders. You heard him talk about public safety. You heard him talk about the commitment from CMPD and from our chief and the work that the officers are doing and the risks that they take. This catch and release due to the suspect's age continues to, we hear It's a stolen vehicle, nonviolent, released. It's a vehicle pursuit, 100 miles an hour, nonviolent, released. They had a gun that they had in their hand when the officers were chasing them, but they didn't point it at anybody, nonviolent, released. These are the things that as a community and as a society in whole are unacceptable, and we really need to work towards solutions, because every single one of these instances puts officers at risk, puts the juvenile at risk, and ultimately puts every one of you in the community at risk, because we have repeat felony offender juveniles that are not changing their way, and because they highlight it. You saw the video. Do you think if I'm afraid of prosecution, I'm making a video where I'm dancing around to music, pointing handguns around in a stolen vehicle while I've got shackles that I just escaped with? You know, that it just, we're committed to finding solutions, and we're going to continue to look towards our community partners and our partners within North Carolina to look for long-term solutions. So with that, I'd like to bring up our next speaker, who is Lieutenant Emily Spindler, who's going to talk about street takeover enforcement and Operation Scarlet. Lieutenant Spindler.
Thanks, Major. I am Lieutenant Emily Spindler, and I'm assigned to the Central Division. So another positive update this year has been the reduction in street takeover incidents and the impact that new legislation has had in cracking down on this dangerous and reckless behavior. Street takeovers involve individuals shutting down intersections to engage in dangerous driving maneuvers with large groups of spectators. In February of last year, CMPD began devoting specific resources to combat this new trend, which gained attention through videos and social media. In 2023, we tracked nearly 200 street takeover and reckless driving related incidents. Officers issued more than 140 citations, made 32 arrests, seized 17 firearms, and towed more than 100 vehicles. So far this year, we've addressed just 24 incidents that have resulted in 4 arrests, 29 citations, 2 gun seizures, and 17 vehicles towed, which is a significant decrease in events. The main difference between this year and last year with enforcement is that our officers are now able, under North Carolina law, to seize vehicles instead of just placing them under an evidence hold, which was primarily done last year. With the evidence hold, suspects were able to petition a judge to sign off and have their vehicles released back to them just after a few weeks. So on December 1st of 2023, a new law took effect that increases penalties for organizers and participants in street takeovers, allowing officers to seize involved vehicles. So already in 2024, officers have seized 15 vehicles compared to 12 total last year. Suspects now have to pay a penalty of twice the value of the vehicle to have it released. In addition, new penalties include a Class 1 misdemeanor for the first-time offense with a fine of at least $1,000. Subsequent offenses can result in a Class H felony. Both the organizers and the spectators of these events are subject to citation and/or arrest as well. These new laws helped us with recent crackdown in May. On May 26th, our Transportation Division and officers responded to various street takeover incidents, including locations in Uptown and Noda. Officers cleared out active participants as quickly and as safely as possible. Officers seized 1 vehicle and issued 7 citations. In the weeks that followed, our Transportation Division continued to investigate these takeovers and their participants. They have since additionally issued 3 more citations and have towed 9 more vehicles, with 7 of those vehicles being outright seized. So there's going to be a video behind you. Some of you may recognize this. It was taken on May 26th during a street takeover in the 400 block of MLK in the Uptown area. On Friday, May 31st, the driver of this vehicle, 17-year-old Anthony Sellis, was arrested. CMPD's Crime Gun Suppression Team, Scarlet Detectives, and North Division Crime Reduction Unit collaborated to take Anthony Sellis into custody for multiple warrants. Detectives attempted a traffic stop, but Sellis fled from police, leading officers and detectives on a 22-minute pursuit throughout the city until he collided with a motorist at the intersection of Charlottetown Avenue and East 7th Street. He then ran from the vehicle on foot until he was apprehended just a short distance away. Crime Gun Suppression Team and Scarlet detectives conducted a search warrant at Sellis's home and recovered 2 stolen vehicles, a key programming tool, 2 stolen firearms, and the shell of another stolen vehicle, as seen here on the screen. However, street takeover was only one of the charges that Sellis faced. 17-year-old Sellis was also a person of interest for Operation Scarlet detectives. So to remind you, Operation Scarlet is responsible for taking down criminal networks in Charlotte, arresting individuals trafficking large amounts of stolen and cloned vehicles, as well as narcotics. In addition to the street takeover charge, and as a result of Scarlet's investigation, Sellis received 47 additional charges stemming from 27 incidents that occurred in April and May. Some of those charges include assault with a deadly weapon with intent to kill. There were 21 counts of larceny of a motor vehicle, attempted larceny of a motor vehicle, 4 counts of possession of stolen motor vehicle, 2 counts of possession of stolen firearm, and the list continues. Detectives with Operation Scarlet also charged Sellis as a juvenile in 2023 with 21 counts of larceny of a motor vehicle. So this is just one of many examples of success from Operation Scarlet this year. So far in 2024, Scarlet has totaled 68 arrests and seized 66 vehicles worth approximately $3.7 million. Detectives have also seized 47 firearms, $206,000 in cash, and approximately 184 pounds worth of illegal narcotics. So just to reiterate the success of Operation Scarlet, since the inception of the operation, which was just 16 months ago, detectives have seized 513 pounds of narcotics. They've recovered 246 vehicles, which are valued at close to $15 million, and seized 158 guns. They've seized approximately $1,146,000. They have conducted 238 search warrants with 153 felony arrests. We are extremely proud of these numbers and the impact that Scarlet is having in cleaning up the streets of Charlotte. So at this time, I will bring it back to Deputy Chief Robinson for close.
Thank you, Emily. So I understand we've thrown a lot of data at you today. I don't want it to be lost on anyone in this room that every statistic, number, and data set represents a person behind that number. A person who was either victimized by somebody intending to do a criminal act, or in many cases, as we've shown, a juvenile who, as we all know, haven't fully achieved the level of judgment and understanding of the consequences of their actions. So when I'm telling you that we're sounding the alarm and emphasizing what you've heard from Chief of Police Johnny Jennings about this epidemic within our community, we can't stress it enough. People, that's who we're in the business to serve. People. I will say this, and you've heard Deputy Chief Arrington stand at this very podium to discuss the events of April 29th. 2024 has been a tough year for this agency and for the law enforcement community as a whole. You've heard numerous examples of that. It was unprecedented, and the 4 brothers that we lost that day will live in our hearts forever. I can tell you we miss each one of them. The 8 more officers who were injured significantly in the line of duty, along with the numerous officers who remain out on administrative leave. That effect on this organization cannot be understated. And we'll never forget that day, nor will we forget the people that we lost. As we've shared before, investigators continue to work through this case. sifting through more than 1,100 body-worn videos and almost 10,000 pieces of evidence. It's had a profound impact on this organization and the men and women who serve, and also on the community, and more specifically that neighborhood, who through various ways have contacted CMPD just to let us know that we're not alone, and neither are they. That date will stay with this organization forever. So although we faced truly unprecedented challenges as a department, I want to assure you, we won't stop. We'll never stop doing the work that this community expects from this police department. We'll stay on our mission to be the best police department in the entire nation and do whatever it takes to make this city proud. So at this time, I'll open it up for any questions you may have. Sir.
So obviously, homicides are at 36% this year for that time frame. What are the tangible steps that CMPD is taking? Does this mean more patrols in areas of frequent calls for service, officers placed in those specific areas in the South Charlotte area, North Charlotte, kind of, if you could elaborate on what's different on how we can get, the tangible steps by the chance?
Well, what we continue to see are people who solve seemingly insignificant problems with permanent consequences. You've heard Deputy Chief Chicory talk about that as he stood on this podium within the first quarter. We talk about engagement with people, right? And we talk about how do we get ahead of the intelligence that might happen later on down the road. Conversely, we can't know what our proactive patrols or our engagement with a particular person has done to offset that trajectory of violence. But I can tell you that by the time our officers and crime scene technicians and detectives and victim services personnel arrive at a scene and a body is on the ground, it's way too late. The other thing I can tell you that we do is we solve generally over the past 10 years between 70 and 80% of our cases. And that bucks the national average significantly. And what that tells you is that this community trusts this organization. This community has the belief and understanding that if they call and tell us something about a homicide, whether it be through Crime Stoppers or whether it be calling the detectives directly, that they can know and believe that they'll be safe in doing that, and that they know that they're serving a greater good by helping to bring closure to a family who's lost a loved one.
And this follow-up real quick just comes from a victim themselves. Last night there was a drive-by shooting in South Charlotte. Those residents say it feels like it's a never-ending cycle. They'll report that there was a shooting. The CMPD will respond. They'll come out. They'll investigate. They'll sometimes apprehend the shooter, but they say they're back out doing it again, like we've seen the repeat offenders. I know it's hard to be everywhere all at once, but is there a peace of mind that you can give to those victims who say, I'm scared to go to bed at night, because they'll just come back and do it again?
Yeah, and look, I think you're bringing up a good point about being safe in your house, and that's the one place you know that you can be safe. But that's not the case for a lot of people, not only because of what happens outside the house, but what happens inside the house, right? What I can say is that when we respond to a scene where multiple shots have been fired, typically there's bullets into numerous houses. And that in and of itself drives up our ag assault numbers, our aggravated assault numbers, specifically our shooting into occupied dwelling. Because for our crime reporting statistics, violent crime is defined, right, or reported as one person, two people, three people, four people, right, for one incident. So I could have one incident, but four people, that's like I've had four violent crimes because I've got four human victims of that. But when we go out, it's all hands on deck. We roll out our crime scene unit. We collect any evidence that's there. We have a robust system with our NIBIN capabilities that allow us to trace back these weapons, these shell casings, the projectiles that are there. Each one has a unique pattern and set of characteristics that we can go back and link cases together, and we've made arrests in those cases to solve that. Now, If it's a juvenile, we've said that that pipeline is sometimes a big U-turn back into the same environment when you talk about access to Kias and Hyundais, access to weapons, and solving minor disputes with permanent solutions. Those are permanent outcomes. Those are things that we deal with every single day. Sir.
So we talk about juvenile crime. You guys do the home visits through Operation J. What has been the message to parents? Because obviously there are repeat offenders, and there's only so much you guys can do. But what have you guys been talking to parents about to get people or get juveniles not to reoffend?
A couple things, and the main objective is we're right here. We're right here, and that I would rather spend days, weeks, months talking to a kid rather than standing over their body on a crime scene. That's the bottom line. And to alert parents or guardians, grandparents, foster parents to the facts that you may not know. And look, I think for those who have children in this room or know about kids, you know there's certain things kids are out doing, particularly if they're teenagers. Lord knows I know this well. You may not know everything that they're doing. But if you don't ask questions, you don't know. So along with an introduction prior to a catastrophe or a tragedy, we align them with resources. We align them with counseling opportunities. We align them with nonprofits who can help go a little bit deeper. We align the parents with resources that may do something as simple as providing a kid with a bed, a place to sleep, or crisis assistance, or food vouchers, or things that the basics of life. And see, we sit here and say, well, juvenile crime, but a lot of these kids are coming from environments where the challenge is just to survive, push them into a situation that oftentimes is too difficult to come back from. And so we have those tough conversations, and I'm telling you, under Major Balamucky's leadership, those officers are going out and literally knocking on doors and saying, hey, we'd rather talk to you here than after you lead us on a high-speed pursuit and crash and kill yourself, or after we come to a scene and see you on the ground. We don't want that.
Youth violence has been a big talking point today. That being said, I know there were a lot of statements made today about how people would like to have the Mecklenburg County, Youth Detention Center open again. We had Jail North, but then obviously closed due to budget issues, and there wasn't a lot of funding for that. Sheriff Greg McFadden has said multiple times that he's been asking and pleading with the county and state to make this happen again. Has CMPD partnered or looking to have conversations with the sheriff about this, about the next step forward and how they can make this happen? Because again, this is not an end-all be-all, but for some people who can't get it together, it might have to be the solution. Because hearing the 3 different examples of violent offenders that are still out on the street could probably have people not really sleeping easy at night, given that they could be a victim of that.
It's a capacity issue, and we're not going to wade into the politics of what happens in Raleigh or with the county or with the city, but I can tell you that until we improve our capacity, however it looks, whether it's building a facility standalone or Jail North or whatever, I think we talk to anybody who could potentially bring a solution to the table that enhances that capacity. And so, to people listening to this, I'd say this is a democracy, and let your voice be heard. If what you've heard today is shocking your conscience, then good. Because what it should say is that you call your representative, you say enough's enough, we need to increase capacity for juvenile accountability within Mecklenburg County. I mean, we find money for everything, right? But we don't take care of kids that if we don't take care of them, the chances of them just deciding to do the right thing later in life without some impactful, meaningful intervention is lost. So, hope that answered your question. Yes, ma'am.
Of the homicides that have happened this year, how many remain open without an arrest?
We've got that. I'll get you the breakdown for that. I know we've made some significant arrests on that. Yeah, we'll get you that.
And I have another question too. Since this briefing shows an increase in homicides and assault with guns, how does the department justify sending nearly 100 officers to Wisconsin during the Republican National Convention?
Well, it's a good question, and I think when other agencies see what we do here in Charlotte, we were sometimes a victim of our own success. And I can tell you that the proud men and women who went to Milwaukee, about 100, did so with pride wearing the CMPD patch on their arm. And we are leaders nationwide in that space when it comes to crowd management and crowd control. Being the head of patrol, though, I'll tell you this, we made sure that before they left, there'd be no impact to service levels within this organization. And so that meant detectives who may be wearing a suit and tie, sitting behind a desk, were out on the road. That might mean a school resource officer who's out for the summer is going to be shagging calls with patrol and out preventing crimes. And that's exactly what happened. I commended in this very room this morning the numerous captains and lieutenants across the board from our patrol units and divisions. And I said, thank you for not impacting staffing the way that some thought it might, because we maintained our staffing levels accordingly and are proud of that.
I'd like to piggyback on what you
Let me go to her just real quick. Yes, ma'am.
We were talking about youth crime just a minute ago, talking about that. It's very rare to not see a juvenile detention center in the city of the size of a lot of us journalists have worked in cities similar in size to Charlotte. Obviously, Jade came out as a response to handling this on your all's end. Is this sustainable as this crime continues for your officers to devote that many hours towards visiting with these families, especially as we're seeing this crime increase? Is this something that you guys have the capacity to do? Is this something that you're going to have to outsource to some of these organizations that you guys have partnered with, or you're kind of sending the families to? It just seems as though it's a lot of time and resources that is being put on your department.
So there's two groups of people that show up to a homicide: the police and the media. Two. And so the question I'd have for you and back to the community is, when are other people going to get as outraged about the things that we see in this room every day? When at 3 o'clock in the morning you're standing there, you see a bunch of blue lights and the crime scene truck pulls up and you see a grieving mother. And so I would say there's no cost too high. There's no time that we agreeably may not have to go and speak to somebody on the front end to try and prevent that outcome. So do we have the capacity to do it? Yes, we do it because it's the right thing to do. And I think it speaks to our position and our posture, which is we're not looking to arrest kids. We're looking to change outcomes. And until we do that in a consistent message across, in a consistent way across the board. And look, I'm not taking away from the community groups across the city who are doing great work. What I am saying is that if you want to be part of the solution, we've got a problem going on in this community, and it's high time people stepped up.
And you'd say, really, from the community standpoint, it's about how you vote and how you communicate to your local representatives, or what's the best way if someone is outraged to be productive?
I think people are pretty good at expressing themselves on social media and on radio talk shows and things like that. But what I will say is that, yes, in a democracy, I think people it's on them to reach out and to articulate what they think is important, and then the people who they elected. And I'm not throwing it all on the elected officials. What I am saying is that we've all got to be on the same page about what's going on. Do I have something over here? Somebody, maybe I dreamt that. Okay. All right. Anything else? Sir, you had one more? Okay. All right. You guys are aligned. All right. That's going to do it for us. Thank you so much. And the stats will be coming in your inboxes later. Thank you.
Yep, we're going to be putting out a press release here shortly, so just be aware of that. Also, the data that you saw today is January 1 through June 30th, okay? So it's not just Q2, it's inclusive of Q1. So keep that in mind. It's the full first half of the year. One more point I wanted to make quickly on the meetings and so forth that have taken place. We've met with a lot of state officials, county officials, and city officials regarding the fate of a juvenile detention facility. And so we do know that the state does have allocated funds for something like that. We do know land is a challenge in our own county. So that's kind of where we are with some of those discussions, that if that money can be allocated to a facility here in Mecklenburg County, land continues to be a challenge, and we're having more of those discussions. Okay? Thank you all so much for joining us. We appreciate it.